Hello everyone, welcome to the podcast. This week we're doing something a little different and a little special. Instead of your regularly scheduled episode, which normally comes out every Wednesday like this episode here, you'll be getting me talking about Batman. So it's not super different.
Welcome to Film Rush.
What do I mean that I'm talking about Batman? Am I going to be assessing his gear, his mental health, his weird fascination with creating small crime fighters that he also legally adopts? Nope. While all of that is rather fascinating and worth some discussion, I'm going to be talking in broader terms. The movies. And no, not those live action thingies. I'm talking about the animated thingies. If anyone has spent any time longer than a few minutes looking over our podcast's content, you'll notice that I tend to discuss animation here and there. So, what's my goal today? Easy! What's the best Batman animated movie? Okay, might actually not be that easy, but anyway, a mountain of content won't stop me. I'll instead just get a drill and power through. So today we'll be focusing on 5 movies, not in any particular order, to keep the runtime of this episode at a reasonable length, but also getting at a good slice of the movies that are out there. And no, I won't be including any Justice League-led films. That involves any film with Justice League or some other variation in the title. This does include Justice League Dark, which has a lot of Batman in it. So, on to the 5 movies. Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. I've seen this one the most recently out of the lot, as on the last episode of Film Rush proper, which you can find on this channel, it's from last Wednesday, I assigned this one to be viewed by my co-host. If you want to be around when we do this sort of stuff every week on Wednesdays, just subscribe to the channel or anywhere you're listening to this podcast in its audio form. I assigned this film because he had never seen it before, and as a fan of this film and as a member of his family, I could not allow that transgression to continue any longer. So what do I think of Batman: Mask of the Phantasm? Well, based on my fanatism above, it's good. Some do say it's the best ever in terms of Batman motion pictures, but I'm not quite so sure about that. Yes, it has fantastic artwork, a swelling orchestral score, solid voice performances by several legends of the industry, and a good origin story for Batman to boot, though it does suffer from a few issues. In this animated feature, set in the 1940s, or at least around there, definitely based on the art style, a troubled yet heroic Batman is pitted against a mysterious figure who is... this is real. Is pitted against a mysterious figure who is rubbing out Gotham City's most dangerous criminals. Not a phrase we use very often today, and who many believe is the Caped Crusader himself. Batman's alter ego, millionaire Bruce Wayne, is about to get married to the lovely Andrea Beaumont, who helps him recover from his need to avenge his parents' murder. So, what are the issues I mentioned earlier, now that we've got the plot out of the way as according to Google, rubbing out? Pacing. Pacing is the chief issue that I have with this film. Now, pacing is a difficult beast to contend with because it doesn't always come down to runtime. A movie can be long but move quickly, or be short and drag on. This one has a few moments where it drags. Batman tries to figure out who the police are mistaking him for, the Phantasm. We get a lot of the backstory information on some of the newer characters in this movie, primarily among them being Andrea Beaumont, mentioned earlier, Batman's old flame from before being taken by the Demon of the Bat. While this love story is touching and the old wounds it brings up in both of them are relatable, I can't help but feel like it's old territory. If you've seen the animated series, you know Batman has a few flames through his time in the streets of Gotham, and most of the time those romances are plagued with very similar issues. This would hurt the movie less if it was in isolation, but given its clear art, cast, and crew connections, they sort of demand to be compared. However, I cannot finish this tiny review of Mask of the Phantasm on a negative, so instead, just take these few seconds of the most epic Joker laugh in history, and know in your heart that I love this movie dearly. 9 out of 10. Batman Hush. One of the newer titles on this list is why I really felt the need to include it so that we kind of kept things modern and hip. This little fellow was the train engine that thought it could. While I sound dismissive at this start, I know there are some bright spots in here. The mystery is pretty solid, actually thwarting my expectations without totally pissing me off. I can say that the twist itself is a bit disappointing though. So, Batman Hush. A mysterious villain uses Catwoman, Riddler, and Ra's al Ghul and several of Batman's other enemies and allies in a game to create chaos in Batman's life. Now this is Hush, and there are a few characters that are insinuated to possibly be Hush. That's really the primary mystery of the film, and the ending twist is the reveal. With all that laid out, my primary issue with this movie is it feels like it's running through the motions. You get your scenes with Batman being a detective, you get him as Bruce Wayne, hamming it up with rich people, and you get the twist ending. The only thing that breaks the monotony in this particular title is the aside that they take us on with Superman. Now, I'm a huge Superman fan. Anyone who has seen my sock or underwear drawer can tell you that. And while this movie still doesn't totally understand the boy in blue as well as I think people should at this point, it isn't a bad representation entirely. It shows his better side breaking through a fog of brainfuckery, no spoilers, and he saves the day as my boy always does. Not to mention the fear Batman feels when considering the ramifications of a Superman not on his best behavior. It's a nice change of pace compared to the whole give him time to prep and he'll win argument that seems to bleed into these stories. Batman's mortality is a huge reason why I think he's so fun to watch. Seeing him fear for his own safety for a bit is refreshing and makes him feel more relatable than the invincible god the internet would have you believe him to be. Overall, Hush gets about a 6 out of 10 for me.
Tell me you have a plan.
Yes. Run.
Batman The Dark Knight Returns. Both parts. Cheesing it just a little bit, but what can I say about these movies in a succinct manner? They're good. They're not groundbreaking, but they're good. The comic is absolutely legendary and stands the test of time for sure, but the films themselves are simply a competent retelling of that story. I don't feel like when I watch the movie that I'm seeing the same story being told in a different or new style, much like how Nolan's films feel when compared to the comics, or even the Batman animated series, for a more relevant example. I feel like I'm just watching the comic in motion. That isn't exactly a bad thing. It's better than a later movie we'll be discussing. So, Batman Dark Knight Returns. As the title would insinuate, this movie is about Batman coming out of retirement where he gets help from a teenage sidekick, a new Robin, and faces off against Joker and Two-Face before a battle to the death begins against Superman. All in all, I think these movies are a bit overhyped and definitely overpriced, but they are an enjoyable time, and the story itself is a nice examination of two opposing ideologies. Batman v Superman tried to replicate this sort of thing, but kind of felt like someone wrote it based on the Cliff's Notes of the actual source material. Here, it's all present. Every bit of the comic that people enjoyed, it gets its moment to shine. You cannot say that you don't enjoy Batman just teabagging the mutant in a mud pit, or the moment where Batman breaks a man's legs to make him afraid. It's all what we love about the more extreme versions of Batboy, and I think the vocal performances here are awesome to boot. This does bring me, however, to the Joker. This is not one of my favorite versions of this character. I can admit that it's mostly down to taste. There isn't much wrong with this telling, and the talk show scene is iconic and ripped off by films people love today as well. I'm looking at you, Joker. The film, not the character. But the vocal performance just didn't match up with the chilling visuals, in my opinion. Discounting the laugh, though. That final scene with the Joker and Batman in the ride and Joker laughs at him, mwah, absolute shivers. Bravo on that one, and good movies all the way around. 8 out of 10.
You got everyone to smile and keep their lunches down when they looked at me, pretending I looked normal.
You think?
Cut it out. Just look at me and have your laugh.
That moves us on to Batman Under the Red Hood. We're almost done, but we have to address this one. This title is a specifically dark story. While we do have some darkness in The Dark Knight Returns and Phantasm, I feel like this one is more emotionally destructive for the Bat family at large, more than those other two are. Especially considering none of the family are in Phantasm and the Robin in The Dark Knight Returns is new. So Under the Red Hood. Basically, Batman is up against the wall facing against a new foe, the Red Hood, who is coming at crime with a very violent method, primarily killing them. and Batman has to deal with the fact that he failed to save Jason Todd, his Robin after Dick Grayson. This film goes across the whole gambit. We've got Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, as I mentioned before, as members of the Bat family. We've got Joker, played by John DiMaggio, fantastic performance, and Ra's al Ghul is even in here. Goes all over the place. Ultimately, it's a great personal story about a father and a son, which sounds campy, but it's actually pretty accurate. I like this movie a lot, because it shows a character with the same end goal as Batman, trained by Batman, but going about the mission in a different manner. Primarily more shooty-shooty rather than a lack of shooty-shooty. Oh, that joke goes into the old notebook of success. Anyway, Batman is faced with his most direct and personal failure in his life, aside from the death of his parents. I don't have to be the one to tell you all that Batman takes familial death a bit hard. I mean, last time he lost family members, he dedicated his life to being a crazed vigilante with a fetish for bats. Obviously, that's a bit of a comedic spin on it, but you have to admit, it's a bit extreme compared to how people in our world handle grief. Now, Batman doesn't go quite so crazy this time around. He's got a few years on himself. He's less emo. He takes the death with a healthy dose of nearly killing Joker, the crazed lunatic himself admitting that Batman put him in a full body cast even. Yeah, Batman isn't completely chemically balanced. But anyway, in the end, I love this movie. It shows what Batman is willing to do to save his family, but also sticks to his moral guns. We all know Batman's a bit gray in the area of killing people at times, specifically in different titles, but in this story, he has a clear line that he will not cross. He will do everything he can to avoid crossing that line, but he will also do everything he can to save someone he cares about. Something that many Bat fans sometimes forget is that while Batman is a stoic mastermind who could defeat God himself given enough prep time, he also has a heart. And really, I couldn't put it better than Amanda Waller herself did. So I'll let her take us out on this title. 8 out of 10.
And for all that fierce exterior, I've never met anyone who cared as deeply about his fellow man as Bruce Wayne. Except maybe you.
Batman: The Killing Joke. Now, I had a difficult time deciding on whether or not to include this one. Logan and I have touched on this one in the past on the podcast, and it did edge out Batman Year One, which was tough to do. So if you want me to talk about Year One, let me know in the comments below. I would leap at the chance to yammer on some more about that bad boy. But The Killing Joke, or at least The Killing Joke plus Batgirl. Look, I'm not the first to say that the first half of this film is garbage. Good intentioned, but garbage. They wanted to make Batgirl more of a character rather than just the woman who got hurt, so man must do punchies plot device. But in the end, their attempts to humanize her just made her more of an object. She gets all hot and heavy with Batman, freaks out over the will we won't we trope that belongs in rom-coms, and then gets shot and just becomes the plot device from the comic book, all the same. Nothing really grows here, and it just bloats the film out. So we'll move past it and talk about the actual Killing Joke. So what is the Killing Joke? Basically, Batman has to save Commissioner Gordon from Joker's weird experiment to prove that all it takes is one bad day to make any man crazy. Well, what do I think of this retelling of possibly one of Batman's most famous, if not the most famous comic? It's not bad. But the thing is, it didn't blow my mind either. The art style is kind of flat, not really allowing the darks to be dark, and the facial designs of the characters just make everyone look, well, flat. Just think about Batman the Animated Series, a much older Batman property, but remember those faces? They all have distinct looks. They all feel like people. Here, everyone just kind of looks cartoony. It's difficult to stipulate because I'm not exactly sure what went wrong here, but beyond that, I also think that the vocal performances suffered. I think the pressure of getting such a massive title into an animated format got to the creators, and they sort of left the actors to do what they do, which ended up leaving them with little to go on and felt as though Hamill and Conroy were just going through the motions. There are some standout moments, like when Batman proves to Joker that he was wrong about the one bad day thing, and when Joker tells his joke at the end. But the speech that Joker gives just never sang to me. When I read it on the page, I imagined it through Hamill's Joker. I remember hearing the voice in my mind from the Batman animated series, and I could feel the epicness of it. Here, it just seems like Hamill is at the tail end of a long recording session, and this is what they went with. I've heard impersonations of his Joker doing this exact speech that had more energy and more dynamicism. Not to toot my own horn, but I am one of them. And no, I'm not a better Joker than Hamill, by no stretch of the imagination at all. I just think that there was no support system here to get the guy who did this to do something better than this.
Why aren't you laughing?
So in the end, the most epic of all of these titles, I think, was the least inspired and most tired. I'm at about a 5 to a 6 out of 10 on this one, and that's sad. I bought it on Blu-ray out of obligation of being a fan, but I've only watched it about 3 times, skipping the first half 2 out of those 3 times. And that's not counting the time I watched it for this analysis piece. It's really disappointing. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me till the end. If you've enjoyed this content, please follow us on SoundCloud, iTunes, or Spotify for the podcast. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we would really appreciate a subscribe and a like. It helps us an absolute ton. If you have specific movies or content you want us to explore, comment on whatever platform you listen to us on, or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Links are in the description. Please have an awesome day.